appreciate that introduction, and I definitely appreciate the opportunity, any opportunity that I have to speak to, listen to, and learn from Iranian-Americans. So I appreciate this chance. But I feel set up. I mean, how can one go last after speakers like Mr. Habib, Steve Preminger, Sean Bagley, Zoe Lofgren, Ross Murakami, and even President Clinton? So bear with me, and we'll get through this. But thank you. It means a lot for me to be here, because I really feel that my roots are deep in this area. I grew up just south of here in Monterey County, was raised there, educated in public schools, UC Davis, Santa Clara Law School, worked 13 years at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. And my wife, who's here, Carrie Panetta, is a Superior Court judge in Alameda County as well. My two daughters are there. And as you know, as many know, my father, Leon Panetta, represented the Central Coast for 16 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. My mother runs the Panetta Institute for Public Policy down at Cal State University, Monterey Bay. And I have the fortunate opportunity to represent the people I grew up with in the DA's office in Monterey County. So it is a great pleasure to be here, and I really thank Baya for having me. I am Italian-American. I am second generation Italian-American. And I feel that Italian-Americans, like Iranian-Americans, are part of the same dream. My grandfather came here, he left the known, and came to the unknown. He decided, fortunately for me, to settle here in California on the Central Coast. He did that because to him, he wanted to give his children a better life. And to me, that is the American dream. That is why I am here. And as I look around the room, I'm sure that is why many of you are here. And President Obama, it's clear, understands the American dream. He understands that everybody deserves that opportunity for the American dream. And he understands that the key to the American dream is security, economic security and national security. And those are the two topics that I've been asked to discuss tonight with you briefly. Now, as we know, when President Obama came to office, the economy was in shambles. And it's completely understandable why. After the Bush wars, after the Bush tax cuts, what would you expect? What would you expect in the first time in our nation's history that we actually cut taxes while waging not one, but two wars? But the economy was in shambles, and it was up to President Obama to save the economy. And he saved the economy by shoring up the economy. And he did that through a number of acts. Started off with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, an act that created 4.3 million jobs, including 500,000 manufacturing jobs. He signed into law the Automobile Rescue Act, forcing American automobile industry to retool and restructure, saving 1 million jobs, and actually creating an additional 250,000 jobs. And he signed into law the Consumer Protection and Wall Street Reform Acts, which basically reined in the risky behavior by the banks and the Wall Street. As I see it, President Obama, when he came into office, and what he's done in the past 4 years, he saved the American automobile industry from extinction, he saved the financial industry from self-destruction, and he has saved the economy from a depression. Now, he's not only rescued the economy, but it's clear that the economy is recovering. In the past year, American automobile sales have doubled, housing prices are up, foreclosures are down. Domestic oil and gas production and U.S. industrial competitiveness, they are increasing. And the banking system has recovered quicker than anybody could imagine, and they are lending more and more to small businesses. Now, I realize that the unemployment rate is high, and that's unacceptable, and the president has acknowledged this. But let me tell you, if the Republican-led Congress would have passed his American Jobs Act last fall, there would have been 1 million more jobs created, and that number would be a heck of a lot lower. But that is just a small example of what President Obama has had to deal with throughout his first term. Just a small example. Because each time, the majority of the time that he went to Congress and asked them and tried to consistently convince them that a sound economy not only takes tax cuts, but tax revenue. That's what he was hoping for. But each time, Congress said no. Each time, they said no. You would think that they would have been humble. You would think that Congress would have been humble. You would think that the Republican leadership would have been humble. After 2 wars, 2 massive tax cuts, and one unprecedented financial crisis, you think they would have shown some humility. But they doubled down. They doubled down on the same policies that caused our economic crisis. And how do we know that? Let's look at their proposed presidential candidate and their proposed economic policies. Now, Mitt Romney has put forward a budget that he says will cut spending by $7 trillion over the next 10 years. The experts have looked at that and said, that's unlikely. And if you had to do that, you're going to cut a heck of a lot more than even Paul Ryan's budget. Now, because Mitt Romney hasn't put forward any specifics as to how we'll get to those numbers, let's look at Paul Ryan's budget. That is a budget that will make the federal government unrecognizable. It will make it unrecognizable, because what would you expect from a budget where 3/5 of the cuts go to the poor, the unemployed, and the uninsured? It will change Medicare and Medicaid as we know it, and it will permanently extend tax cuts for the rich, the millionaires and billionaires. Now, speaking of millionaires and billionaires, let's look at Romney's tax plan, the tax plan he put forward. The tax plan that Robert Samuelson of the Washington Post said does not make sense. Where Erskine Bowles, part of the Bowles-Simpson deficit reduction team, said that Mitt Romney's tax plan would not shrink the deficit. But we do know what it would do. We do know what it would do. People who make over $250,000 under this plan would receive tax cuts, including millionaires who would receive close to $100,000 in tax cuts. In order to make up for those tax cuts, the experts have analyzed this. And the experts said that either 1, you continue to add to the deficit, or 2, the remaining 95% of this country, their taxes are going to be raised. Either way you look at it, under the Romney plan, the rich will benefit and the rest of the country gets burned. They're calling themselves the comeback team. I call them the throwback team, because they are going to take us back to the future. They're going to take us back to the same economic policies that put us in that position in 2008. But they've made it easy for us. I know everybody in this room understands that. But let's hope that everybody across this nation understands the stark choice that they are facing. A choice between a candidate who will take us back to the trickle-down economic policies, the failed policies of the Bush years, or a president who has led us through tough economic times and will continue to lead us forward to the economic security of our children's time. Now, when President Obama is elected, I am confident that he will continue to use his leadership to deal with a couple issues. He'll deal with the deficit, and he will deal with the sequestration issue that's coming up in January of 2013. Now, President Obama tried to get a long-term solution to the deficit in the summer of 2011. But after negotiations broke down, this is in that book that Paul Woodward just recently wrote about, after negotiations broke down, they were stuck with a short-term solution, the Budget Control Act, and they left any long-term solution to the deficit to that super committee. You guys remember that? The super committee. And they said the super committee is going to come together, they are going to compromise, and they are going to give us that solution. What happened? What do you think happens in Congress? Nothing. Nothing. And that's what we're stuck with. We are stuck with this sequestration, where there's going to be these massive cuts in our domestic and defense spending. Massive cuts. That's not only going to put this economy on the cliff of a financial depression, it's going to throw us off that cliff. My dad has said, and I got a comment, I got to repeat these quotes, but he said, basically, what the Budget Control Act has done is put a gun to our head. And by the super committee not compromising, they've racked that slide and put a bullet in the chamber. And come January, that trigger is going to be pulled. And the economy is going to die. That's what's going to happen unless somebody steps up. It makes me think, why would you agree to this? Why would you agree to put our country in this position? And I kind of thought about that. Why would President Obama agree to this? Because and I thought about it, and the answer that I came up with is that when you are dealing with a Republican Congress, Republican candidates, Republican elected officials who take a pledge before going into office saying, I will never raise taxes. When you are dealing with a presidential Republican candidate who says, I would never agree to a budget that has $1 in cuts, $1 in taxes, even though you have $10 in spending cuts. When you are dealing with people like that, you need something to force them to get them to do anything. And that's what President Obama tried to do with this sequestration. But now, ladies and gentlemen, now we're faced with that. And you just hope that the leaders find the courage. As Secretary of Defense, my father has said about the people that follow him, the men and women in our armed services. He says that if those men and women, if they can put their lives on the line and take the risk every day to protect this country, then why can't our congressional leaders, why can't our leaders in Congress find the courage, take the risk to solve our nation's problems? President Obama has proven his leadership. He has proven his leadership, and he's done this, and he's willing to compromise. He's proven his leadership. Look at his foreign policy decisions. Look at his decision on the administrative action with the DREAM Act. He's proven that he can pull people out of that partisan crater and make them come together for decisions. Look what he's done on the economy. Look at the decisions he got through Congress on the economy. And look what he did by getting Congress to agree to the overhaul of our health care plan. President Obama has proven that he has the courage to take the risks necessary, he has the courage to lead this country, and he has the courage to lead. Clearly, when he is elected, he will continue to strive for the economic security that we desire and our children deserve. Now, President Obama's leadership has been demonstrated clearly through his national security as well, and his message of change extended to our country's foreign policy and dealings with the nations in the Middle East. And that has been conveyed in a number of ways. From 2009, his New Beginning speech in Cairo, to his ending of the war in Iraq, to his support for the nascent democracies that arose from the Arab Spring. President Obama is committed to the peace and stability in that region. Now, Mitt Romney believed that this type of commitment is one big apology tour. But President Obama knows that this policy will take time, understanding, and sober statesmanship, not political posturing and rhetoric. Despite the administration's strong support, it is clear, as we've seen this last week, it is clear that there are small factions of violent extremists who continue to hamper the peaceful democratic efforts and will harm American citizens. Nevertheless, President Obama remains committed to the millions of people in those countries who yearn for freedom, dignity, and self-representation, and the Americans who are assisting them, those people, with peace and security. Now, part of the reason why you, your parents and grandparents came to America is the peace and security that this country provides. Like many immigrants, you came here with nothing or little to nothing, but that dream of security for you and your family. You've worked hard, you've educated yourselves and your children, and you have become an essential part of this community and our country. At the same time, like all immigrants, we love our heritage and deeply care for our families and loved ones in our homeland. And we hope and pray that they too can find peace, opportunity, and happiness. It's no secret today that Iran is in turmoil, and it has become isolated from the rest of the world. The regime has solidified its power and its firm grip over the Iranian people. And that was demonstrated back in 2009 with the violent crackdown on the Green Revolution. The regime has engaged in hateful and hostile bombast towards Israel, its people, and its culture. It supports Hamas, and it is suspected of carrying out attacks against Israeli people beyond its borders. And the regime has promoted terrorism and instability in the Middle East, most recently by sending armaments through Iraq to Syria. And the regime has consistently acted under a policy of concealment and a pattern of deception when it comes to its nuclear program. And it's this which has led to the world's lack of confidence in the peaceful purposes of that program. Now, it is true that Iran is a very old member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And Iran has never been found to be in formal violation of that treaty nor has the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association, found any evidence that there has been a bomb-building program in Iran. However, Iran has systematically defied and failed to meet its basic reporting obligations under the NPT. So much so that the UN Security Council has passed 7 formal resolutions against Iran since 2006, including a formal demand to cease its enrichment activities. Yet in the face of those formal censures and orders, the regime continues to install and operate hundreds of new centrifuges and conduct nuclear enrichment at a 20% level. That's the level that gets a significant way towards a nuclear bomb. Now, due to the regime's continued production and refusal to abide by the safeguards of the IAEA, Iran faces a united international community, including Russia and China, that are engaging in diplomacy to resolve these issues. However, by Iran failing to comply with international law and failing to negotiate seriously, the world community has imposed some of the toughest economic sanctions in history to force diplomacy. In Iran, unemployment is up, food costs are up, oil sales are down, the business community and the middle class are hurting, and the Iranian people are suffering. In a word, Iran has backed itself into a very tight and lonely corner. Now, added to all this, as we've heard this past week, is a potential for the threat of military action against the Iranian nuclear facilities. Israel believes that the nuclear threat from Iran is imminent. They believe that Iran will cross that quote-unquote red line. Now, Mitt Romney strongly endorses this position, and he appears ready to outsource such a decision on an attack for an attack on Iran to Israel. And Mitt Romney has gone even further by stating that he would never agree to allow Iran to enrich uranium at any level, even though Iran has the legal right to this peaceful enrichment under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Excuse me, may I take my jacket off? Now,
that's a hot subject.
Yeah. Very good. Now, you understand that Iran has that right, and the international community understands that Iran has that right to peaceful enrichment. And it's also understood, I'm sure, by all of us, as well as this administration, that a unilateral strike by Israel against Iran will only draw the U.S. into a regional war, further destabilize countries like Lebanon, Syria, even Libya and Egypt, send oil prices skyrocketing, shatter the international support needed for diplomacy, and it will galvanize support in Iran for the country's regime. Essentially, any attack on Iran will delay and not destroy a nuclear weapons program, making Iran's eventual acquisition of a bomb even more likely. Now, the United States strongly believes, along with the international community, that there is still time to resolve the nuclear issue. Is it that bad? Once again, the United States strongly believes, along with the international community, that there is still time to resolve the nuclear issues diplomatically. However, President Obama has made clear that if the regime makes a decision to build a nuclear bomb, if it gets close to crossing that red line, all options, including military options, are on the table to prevent that from happening. Nobody wants war, but history tells us that too often misjudgments are made and threats become real. The last thing we need is another war in the Middle East. The only way, ladies and gentlemen, it's clear, the only way to prevent such a war is diplomacy. The U.S., the P5-1 negotiating team, now negotiating with Iran, and the international community has made clear it is prepared to negotiate. And both sides must now seriously engage in these negotiations to resolve this issue. Both sides must seriously consider such options as Iran ceasing to enrich uranium at that 20% level, giving up its existing stockpile of the enriched uranium at that level, and allowing Iran to exercise its right to enrich uranium, so long as there is tight monitoring in place. And of course, the sanctions should be lifted. But with further unchecked development, and enrichment, time is running out. Time is running out. And the people of Iran deserve better than to live under a cloud of war. The history of Persia is part of the history of empires, where too often the leaders are so absorbed with power that they lose sight of their weaknesses. The regime of Iran and the world have a choice: to find a peaceful resolution for these difficult issues, or to continue to threaten, to antagonize, and to ultimately fight over these issues. Our prayer is that the right choice will be made. The choice of our grandparents and our parents was to come to America so that their children can enjoy a better life. That is the American dream. Clearly, that is our dream. President Obama has chosen to take the steps forward for our economic security and national security so that that dream is fulfilled. Let us pray that all leaders in this country and in all countries make that same choice based on that same dream. Thank you.